Welcome one and all, it's time for yet another Warhammer The Age of Sigmar tournament report featuring the brand new General's Handbook and all the delightful features therein. The Stormcast. Are the Annihilators the new hotness? Or are we foolishly not taking long strikes thinking that shooting's going to be worthless because of the changes to obscuring terrain? Let's find out. So, there is my list. How does this differ from the lists I was running under the previous handbook? Or, it was kind of a mini handbook that we got in the new edition box, wasn't it? So, there's no big monster, not a lot of flying stuff, and people are anticipating, or have been anticipating, that perhaps there's going to be a lot of units hiding in the obscuring terrain or around the obscuring terrain, so less shooting being brought. And that is definitely the case for my army. I've only brought a few very short range shooting attacks that are not really the primary purpose of the unit they're on. So very little shooting, no long strikes for example, because if we get into a game where the enemy is able to hide in the terrain, that's a very expensive unit of mine that can't do anything. The other big change in the General's Handbook is battle tactics. The old style completely gone, and they've been replaced with more of a grand strategy that you score over the course of the game style. So you pick at the start what you want to achieve, and then during the game you can achieve those at your own leisure pretty much. You're not forced into picking one each turn, and all the nonsense that comes with that. People would spend a very long time choosing their battle tactic at the start of each turn, typically wondering which ones the enemy could auto-counter by dropping a manifestation in a certain spot or redeploying next to a piece of terrain you were trying to capture, that kind of thing. Now, that's totally gone. You just get on with playing the game. And I did notice immediately that all the games were faster to play, or at least faster to get started. Some armies still have a lot more thinking time than others because of a lot of bizarre reaction abilities that they have. But in general, much quicker. So what do I think should be able to take advantage of this? Well, Annihilators. The entire list is built around getting the most out of these two units of 6 Annihilators, one of which you may notice isn't really Annihilators at all, but all these 6 models here have been retired by GW. They've been put out in the Legends, so they're not for competitive play anymore, Retributors and the Lord Ordinator. So they have now become a unit of 6 Annihilators, which, as far as I'm concerned, absolutely fine. I can't see anyone ever having an issue with that. They've got big hammers. Lord Ordinator has some cool hammers as well, and he stands out from the rest clearly as the champion. So, how do we get them working? Because in this age of redeploy at the end of the movement phase, then they drop down, people redeploy away from them, they fail their charge, next turn they die. So how do we prevent that? First of all, we've got the Lord Imperatant, who lets them make a small move after they drop down from the sky, so you can get closer to the enemy. And then we've got Gardas, who gives them +1 on their charge as well, so make it more likely that they'll close that distance, even if the enemy has redeployed a little bit. And you don't mind if they're a little bit of a distance away, because with the Grand Hammers you really want to roll 8 or more on the charge anyway, because then you put Strike Last onto the enemy. And then, with the extra attack each from Gardas as well, that is just 1,000,000 attacks coming in, 1,000,000 damage, things will die. So what else do we need to get them in? We need to clear out the screens, so that's what the unit of 6 Prosecutors is in there for, along with the Lord Relictor. So the recycling strategy, which is you send a unit in with the Lord Relictor nearby, they kill something, normally they would die in your opponent's turn immediately after this, but with the Lord Relictor there, if you give him the new Beacon of Azir, I think it's called, let me pull that up now. I believe that's the right name for it. Yeah, there we go. The Beacon of Azir. So it's a once per game auto roll of a 7 on a spell or a prayer. So automatically teleport them to safety, which is usually back to the portal. And then with a unit like Prosecutors, they don't mind being teleported out of the action, because then when they come back in later through the portal, they've got 3 dice charge, they're very likely to make it in again. Whereas something like Annihilators, dropping them in again 9 inches away, less reliable they'll be able to get back in the fight. So prosecutors are going to be good in that role, charging in, kill all the chaff that's in the way of the good stuff. The Lord Relictor teleports them away again in the enemy turn. Lord Relictor probably gets killed, but I've also given him the legendary tenacity, so they may have to use 2 units to do that, because there's a 2/3 chance that he'll come back to life the first time you kill him and get D3 wounds back. So, and then the prosecutors can go in again to clear out more stuff, or go for some of the more expensive targets if there's nothing chaff-wise left, and then all the Annihilators drop in 2 units of 6 with the Imperator and Gardas as a combo. So, we've also got Vandus Hammerhand in the list. The thinking was, if everything in the list is geared towards bringing the most out of the Annihilators, Vandus does technically have an ability where he can fight and then pull a Warrior Chamber unit into fighting straight after him, so that would include the Annihilators. The issue is that with the units I have, he may not necessarily get to go in the sky and drop down with them. I've got a lot of units that want to be going through the portal, I've got a lot of units that want to be coming down from the sky. So it's possible he might not actually get to do much of that. And otherwise he's just fast and vaguely killy. He's alright otherwise, not great. Then we've got 3 shield Annihilators because there were points left over at the end, and they're quite cheap. And the Questa Soulsworn, who are just efficient for their cost. You get a lot of wounds for how much or how little they cost, and they've got... Their damage output is around the same as the shield Annihilators, but you can also get a ward save on the Questors if you get them to their quest marked objective as well, and a once per game teleport, which is a big deal. So, it's all about getting the best out of the 2 units of 6 Annihilators though. They get into things, they murder things. No room for long strikes, they're expensive, and people might hide in the terrain. So it's all about the Annihilators, and if I'm coming up against some kind of gun line, I can always drop them down around obscuring terrain, and then try and charge from there, depending on the layout. You can also use places of power to make objectives obscuring if you're against a gun line as well. So there are options here. Let's have some close-up pictures of the army, shall we? I've also got the portal, obviously, which is 20 points now. No wizard in the army. And no monsters. There's Hammerhand Vandus himself. That was one of the earlier models I painted in the army, back in 1st edition. Gardas there, the Lord Imperatant. The Lord Imperatant doesn't really do anything other than let the Annihilators and anyone else move a little bit after dropping out the sky. Because other than that, his profile is pretty awful. But he is cheap enough now to where maybe he's worth investing in to get the Annihilators working. So, the new missions, the objectives all have different colours, or they're in pairs generally, and you'll often get bonus points for either controlling pairs or controlling one of each colour, or controlling various objectives in a line or in a triangle. Some combo of objectives normally gets you some bonus points. But the big scores are at the start. If you just hold one objective, you get 5 points. That's half of the primary objectives available are just from holding one objective. And then usually the second part of it is quite easy as well. So on this one, it's score 3 victory points if you control any pairs of objectives. So, for example, the green or the red. And that's usually fairly easy to do. And then the last bit, which is more difficult, usually, on this one, control more objectives than your opponent. Either of those two are potentially harder than the other, depending on what you're up against. But typically, the last one is the hardest bit, but there's only 2 points for it. So if you're only able to score one objective, or do the second part, or hold one and hold more, but not necessarily a pair, even if you're falling behind in the score, you're not falling behind very much. You're not going to get totally stomped on the primary objectives as long as you keep holding one, and you're going to stay in touch. And then your battle tactics are worth, each one potentially 15 over the course of the game, so you've got 30 points to play for there as well. Okay, so on this one, the underdog bonus is that you pick a pair of objectives if you're the underdog, and for the rest of the battle round, add 1 to the Ren characteristic of friendly units' melee weapons while they're contesting either of the target objectives. So this is interesting because some of them have an effect that would hit enemy and friendly units on the picked objectives. This one specifically says friendly units will benefit from something. So not all of them are that specific though. So this is Surge of Slaughter. And in the first round, I'm up against the Cruel Boys. So I'm going to pull up that list right now. There we go, that page is just loading. Okay, so let's have a look at what I've got on the battlefield first of all then. So you can see I've got the Annihilators down, shield Annihilators, because I've got 9 units, so 4 can go in the sky, and that's generally going to be the 2 Grandhammer Annihilator units, Gardas and the Imperator, because they all want to come down together in one big blob. It's nice and compact because there's short range requirements on some of those abilities that they have as well, so you want to get them very close together. So that means everyone else starting on the table. Prosecutors and the Questers and the Lord Relictor typically around the portal. Prosecutors can have a finest hour used on them, go through the portal, kill something. The Lord Relictor teleports himself around that general vicinity as well. And then they've killed something, he'll then teleport them away next turn. The Questers, if they all need to be teleported away urgently on turn 1, something really pressing needs to be jumped on, they can use their once per game ability to teleport, but typically they're going to wait for the portal to become available and then go through there, and then they can save their own teleport for later on. Bandus, he is kind of just there because he looks cool, and I haven't really got too much of a plan for him other than try and support when there's a fight going on. So, and then in the sky, we've got the Annihilators, Gardas, and the Imperator. So, I think I've got that enemy list loaded up now. So, there are some Bolt Boys, but this is pretty much the only shooting in this Cruel Boys list. Often, Cruel Boy shooting used to be very good, actually. Back in the previous edition, when they did mortal wounds with their shooting, it was very scary for Stormcast. That went away. And now shooting is slightly less effective because of all the obscuring terrain about the place. And I'll go into which battle tactics we chose for our lists in a minute as well. So what else have we got in here? The general is Gobsprak. There is a killer boss on Great Nashtooth as well. The Scourge of Gairan rules, which is, I think it's that one at the back there with the nice highlighted armor plates. Then there is, oh, he's a slippery scumbag as well, should be noted. There is a unit of Gut Rippers. There is, it's reinforced with the full command. There's 2 units of Gut Rippers in here. There's another one in the 2nd Regiment, which is, oh yeah, I didn't go through my regiments. I'll do that after this. The 2nd Regiment, there is a Swamp Boss Scumdrek, which I think is this one? Or is it the other way around? You know what? I don't know. Because they're both, let's see, one is 160 points. Yeah, that's got to be the smaller one that's 160. So surely this is the 250-point one. Then there's the Reinforced Gut Rippers number 2 in with this guy. And the Monster Killers, which obviously aren't going to have a very good time in this game. So there's some Monster Killers there, I think. And then we've got some Hobgrots over there, which are in the next regiment with the Swamp Caller Shaman with Potgrot, who is in the tower already, just hanging out there. There is another unit of Monster Killers, and there are the Bolt Boys in that regiment as well. And there's the tower as the faction terrain. So that is 3 regiments. I have also got 3 regiments. And the number of regiments now, it is a big deal in more ways than one, because obviously it's still the case that if you have less, you can dictate who goes first, which is a big deal still. Especially in this new General's Handbook, taking the double, if you're taking it early in particular, is less of an issue for you, because that still leaves you with turns later to score all your battle tactics. You don't need 5 turns of eligibility to actually score them all now. So taking a double is sometimes less punishing if you do it at the right time. So deciding the turn order and setting up the potential for you to get a double is potentially very good. But on the other hand, if you have more regiments, then you can get a reroll on the priority roll once per game, which can also be huge because you can potentially win or deny, for example, a double with a reroll. So they've balanced that out a little bit. And these are the battle tactics that I have gone for, which is Restless Energy and Intercept and Recover. So Intercept and Recover, almost everyone at the event seemed to be choosing this. It's very straightforward. You just want to be killing units each turn. So your opponent will select 3 units that are carrying treasure, and then you have to kill those units over the course of the game. And you want to be... You don't necessarily have to cash in the battle tactic on the turn you kill them either, so it's a good one to do early and then just keep in the bank if you don't want to build up too much of a lead, and then you can cash it in later. Because it just says they have to have been destroyed during this battle. It doesn't automatically get cashed in. So the 3 stages of that, as long as you're not leaving it too late. And another thing to consider is that if you think, oh, well, I'll save them for the last 3 turns, but then later on in the game you get the opportunity for a double turn, then you might not be able to score one then. So you don't necessarily want to save them. It just depends what the points difference is between you and your opponent and what you're going to be able to score later on as well. Then Restless Energy is a bit more of a here and now battle tactic. You can't really save these for later because it specifies that it's at the end of a turn. So if you control an objective that was controlled by your opponent at the start of the turn, so you steal an objective off them, and then at the end of that turn you would cash this in. Don't think you can bank that because the conditions wouldn't necessarily be met in a future turn unless you steal a different objective off the enemy. So these are kind of more immediate, these ones. And the next one is if you control the objectives in enemy territory, and the next one is to control every objective on the battlefield. So both of these were very popular at the event, and it seems like these are the 2 that just escalate wildly if you're already winning, because you're already murdering everybody and you're already taking over the battlefield and taking over all the objectives. So it's just natural that if you're already whooping someone, these are going to come up. There are others that are easier to score when you're not necessarily destroying the enemy, but they weren't as popular at this event. And in this game, my opponent has also gone for Intercept and Recover, which is kill the 3 treasure carrying units, but also Scouting Force, which involves moving out of your territory and then controlling objectives or terrain features that are within enemy territory. And then finally, contesting a terrain feature that you control and is within enemy territory more than 6 inches from friendly territory. So pretty much just advance and then hold on to things in enemy territory is that one. I see we've got, who have we got in the chat? We've got Steve and Natalie. There's actually a lot more people who aren't commenting yet. So good evening to everybody, even the silent ones. So if you've played, any of you people out there have played the new General's Handbook, let me know. I am a fan, by the way, spoiler alert. I like the changes, especially battle tactics. The specifics of them, not necessarily perfect yet, but the general idea of taking away that start of turn thinking phase, which could take quite a while, I'm a big fan of that. So, you can see that I have gone first, and I believe I was thrust into taking the first turn by my opponent. So, I think I fail to actually get the Lord Relictor's prayer off, so he isn't able to teleport himself forward with the prosecutors. But they decide they're going to go in anyway. And you can see I put Finest Hour on them. And I just want to get into the... If we go back to the wide shot from earlier, I'll show you what I'm thinking here. Because the whole game plan is the Annihilators are going to hit the cool stuff. So, what is the cool stuff I want to kill? It's Gobsprak, it's the big monsters, and potentially the Gut Rippers. But really it's these 3 big things are going to be the juiciest, most succulent, tenderest of targets. So, I want to clear a path to those things. And you can't just do that by charging headfirst into this wall of orcs here. So what I'm going to do is try and pull them apart in different directions and leave spaces for the Annihilators. And just slam in, try and take out some chaff. So the Prosecutor's goal, even though the Relictor failed to keep up with them, I still thought it was worth doing, even without him being able to make them escape again, because it'll bring enemy units over here. So you can't actually see the monster killers that are hiding behind those woods at the moment, but my Prosecutors jump over there and attack them. And then I'm going to try and pull them in all different directions to leave spaces so the Annihilators can get into the meat. So we'll see if it works. Blasting back to where we were. So they do get in, and despite Finest Hour, they don't do that much actually. They have quite a poor round of attacks, sadly. And also, by the way, in a practice game I had, we thought that you could put the treasure onto units that were in reserve, but sadly you can't do that. So in this game I've put it on the prosecutors, knowing full well that they may get killed, but I'm happy to live with that. I've also put it on, let's see, I think I've put it on Vandus and the Shield Annihilators as well. Over on this side, the Questors teleported onto their quest marker's objective using their once per game teleport. So this is an occasion where the first turn I thought it was really imperative that I start splitting up the enemy. And in order to do that, attack them on the two extremes all the way out on each flank and see what that shakes up. And one of them is leaving its toe on the objective still, so I get my 5+ ward save, and one of them has dragged the Bolt Boys into combat, so that if they want to escape they're going to take some damage, lowering their shooting output. And these are monster killers as well. So just attacking both flanks with my less important units immediately, and we'll see what space shakes out in the enemy turn. In the comments, Natalie, loving the new GHB so far, especially when it comes to list building. List building around battle tactics is an interesting concept. You used to be able to build back in the day around your grand strategy, but that wasn't worth very many points. So I like building around battle tactics, and I'm liking the new scenario maps so far as well. So 10 points for me, no battle tactics scored yet, but it only takes 3 turns to score all your battle tactics, so you don't have to worry about that too much early on. Into my opponent's turn, and you can see the Bolt Boys move away, and they do actually lose a model as a result of moving out of combat, which is good. And we've got, which one was this again? This is the cheaper of the two, isn't it? This is the Killer Boss on Great Gnashtooth, I think. Anyway. And this one has teleported. So 9 inches away from the Questors is going to try and get stuck into them. But with their ward save, I'm confident they'll hang on. I'm kind of pleased to see this though, because this is the kind of spreading out I was looking for. We want the enemy pulled apart, leaving those big gaps between them so I can drop Annihilators in, especially with 12 Annihilators and 2 heroes that all need to drop in roughly the same space. You need a really big gap to get them anywhere. And the other hero as well, or the other Scumdrek, I think this one's Scumdrek anyway. Scumdrek is also going for the Questors. Over on this side you can see a big unit of Gut Rippers have gone after my Prosecutors, which isn't very nice of them. And bit of shooting going on into the Soul Sworn. Not too effective yet, but in the combat phase though, both the big monsters have got stuck into them. And the Prosecutors are getting beaten up as well. The Questors do manage to kill off the rest of those monster hunters there, which is nice. And then the Questors don't actually die. That ward save's a very big deal, just from towing onto this objective. They're not going to keep it against the monsters, even with the bonus to control score, because one of them's worth 5. But they do have their ward save and they're still live, which means whenever I drop down now, these two can't escape. They can't redeploy because they're stuck in combat with me, which is a big deal. The Prosecutors get killed, which is sad, but I could always bring back in a 3 later if I need them for an urgent mission. So, my opponent kills one of my treasure carrying units and gets 5 victory points there. And then, this guy, I think he uses a power through to get away from the Soul Sworn there, so he's not locked in combat anymore. So, I've got my Annihilators to come down, and suddenly you can see I've got options, and by options I mean I'm probably going to bring them down here, because they can definitely kill these 2 big beasties in one go. And they'll be on an objective, and they're away from like the tar pit units like Gut Rippers. That's not really what you want to be hitting with Annihilators. The damage output they have is vast, but you really want them to totally clear out a unit in one go, which they definitely can do with these like 10 to 20 wound monsterish heroes are really in danger against Annihilators. A unit of 6 can definitely deal with those in one go. A unit of reinforced gut rippers, which is like 20 of them, which is like 40 wounds, generally they're going to survive. So the Annihilators will be stuck there, and maybe when they hit back, they'll do damage to them anyway. And with the Annihilators, ideally you want to be using all-out attack on one of them, which means that their defense is going to be lowered, or if anything is available to hit back at them, which you don't want. So you want to hit things you can kill, ideally, which are things like this. That's what I'm going to go for. And I get the priority into the next turn. You can see my opponent only scored 7 there via not holding any pairs of objectives. It does hold more, but does not hold any pairs. So into my turn, you can see that Vandus has gone from here. And, well, my Annihilator bomb dropped down to quite good effect. So you can see this unit of reinforced gut rippers. Over on this side, I got Annihilators and Gardas in after they dropped down away from the monsters. If we go back to the last wide shot here, actually, I dropped down all the Annihilators in a bundle kind of here. So one unit charged off that way with Gardas. They rolled sufficiently high that they put Strike Last onto the monster they contacted. So the other one was quite happy to then charge into the Gut Rippers, knowing that if I'm putting Strike Last around the place, then I'm going to be able to hit them before they hit me, regardless of which one I choose first. Because you don't want to be facing all those Gut Rippers with them hitting you first. That's just a terrible recipe for disaster. So they made it in over there with the help of the Imperator, obviously giving them that bit of movement afterwards. And successful. So the Annihilators, one unit of 6, kills 15 Gut Rippers and loses 4 in retaliation though. And then over here, the Questers and the other Annihilator unit and Gardas took out both the monsters, which is quite a big deal. And I can now leave the Questers here on their ward save objective just to chill. And it's going to lower my opponent's scoring chances if I've got secure positions on this objective and this one, because that means that they can't score any pairs for the rest of the game. And I'm already in the lead a bit, so I think that's a good move. Keeping these two locked down means that they're denied some of the scoring potential each turn now. And this unit is heavily weakened in the middle. It is backed up by Gobsprak. You can see that I teleported Vandus all the way over here, so he could maybe join in with the charge, but he failed his. And I even put Finest Hour on him and everything, so that's a waste. So I score take an objective off my opponent, first part of Restless Energy, and that gives me 10 points for the objectives because I am holding a pair, which are these two, and I am holding more because I've got 3 objectives, and part of the battle tactic has been satisfied. So I think, did my opponent maybe bank the 5 points for killing one of my units and not cash it in yet? That's possible. So into my opponent's turn, Gut Rippers moving on to the objective. You can see the Lord Relictor didn't like the look of that, so just teleported himself out of the way before they got there, because he was a bit vulnerable against all 20 of them, but I'm quite happy for them to sit on that. The Foot of Gork comes into play now and starts splashing wounds around, which is a really interesting spell because most manifestations, when they are cast, can't then move immediately after it, but apparently this one can. It's cast and then can move towards you and start stomping around, which is annoying. And whittling down my units. Gobsprak moves into the centre. They want to deal with these 2 Annihilators. And the Bolt Boys have teleported themselves over here as well to try and shoot at my shield Annihilators, obviously looking to try and lay a claim to this pair of objectives. Gobsprak makes it in to the Annihilators, and they are obviously killed. And over on this side, I beat up the Foot of Gork, so that's gone again. And I think this time my opponent cashes in that to score the 5 points. There we go. So even though they were killed last turn, it's been scored this turn, because you can put it in the bank and then see what the score is. So I'm still in the lead. And, well, this pitch is a bit premature here because, look, something's been Finest Houred and died. But was... There we go, in my turn 3, you can see I have brought, I think, an Annihilator's come back to life here with a rally. And there's not a lot for me to do, actually. You can see that I brought down 3 Annihilators fresh from the sky, but they failed their charge, unfortunately. Because I want to wipe out this unit of Gut Rippers, because they're one of the treasure carrying units, and there's only like 4 of them left in there. But they failed their charge, sadly. And this unit of Annihilators are just going to be hanging out here, mostly. Because we want to protect this Questa Soulsworn, because that is also a treasure carrying unit, so we don't want to die there. And also the Shieldies would like to stay alive, ideally, as well. But you can see now, as we get to the enemy turn, Gobsprak is going for them. Bolt Boy's blasting away at the other unit, so we've just got Mr. Ordinator Annihilator left in that unit now. Gobsprak makes it in. Shield Annihilators being whittled down, and they get eaten. And then my opponent has destroyed 2 units carrying the treasure now. You can see in my turn 3 I only scored 10, because I'm losing out on the objectives a bit now. My opponent is now scoring big, which is scary. And if we look at a bit of a wide shot here, the issue I'm having now is that I'm running out of units. I've splattered them in and killed things, but I don't necessarily have the board control anymore. My Questor is down to 1 model. The Annihilators that I brought back to life failed their charge, so we're just a bit low on numbers and mobility at the moment, which could be an issue. Into round 4, I get the priority. And if we look actually back here, you can see I've got my Lord Relictor over there, hoping to teleport the Annihilators. I rally another one back, so they're up to 6, and teleport them over here. And if we look who was there, I don't know if anyone was on that objective. So I just jumped them on it. So I remember, I really wanted to kill someone, but I knew there was a lot of points up for grabs if I jump onto this objective, so I had to teleport the Annihilators there. And I put Vandus onto this one. And I've got the Lord Relictor and the Questa Soulsworn hanging out on this objective. As far back as the Questa can go, just staying out of danger to protect the treasure. And Gardus steamed into the middle. And my goal is to kill Gut Rippers. But I think the other Gut Ripper unit is actually up there now, hiding. So I do score 10 points though, because I'm holding this objective at the top with Vandus. I'm holding this one, and I've got a pair. So there's some decent points scored there. My opponent's turn. Foot of Gork is going after Gardus, which isn't very nice. We've got the Buff in the chat. Good evening. Gardus is going to get surrounded and killed, obviously, by all this horribleness. And 1 unit of Gut Rippers are chasing after Vandus, who is protecting treasure, so he wants to stay alive. And we've got a double 6 charge, meaning that I think these are the Monster Hunters. They make it into the final Questa Soulsworn with a double 6 charge, which I think is pretty much what they needed, almost. And my opponent is now scoring big each time. I think that one should be a 5 rather than a 6 on that dice there. So, not looking good, but I do get to go first in round 5. And really I'm just hiding, trying to preserve treasure points now. And trying to kill what I can. The Annihilators managed to get in there and whomp. But you can see there's still a couple of Gut Rippers left in that unit, so I don't even get any treasure points for that unit either. Lord Relictor throws himself in there to try and murder people, but also gets killed. And it's not looking great, as you can see. So these Annihilators, when they were positioned last turn on this objective, they were put in such a way that they could move to my teleporter, which is in the bottom left, and then teleported over here. And I think they were able to... yeah, they charged into the Gut Rippers, who were hanging off the objective a bit, and wiped out most of them. But now there's 2 left, and they're out of combat, so I'm not going to score for that. So just 5 points, because I don't hold a pair anymore. I just have an objective. Okay, so turn 5 for the enemy. spreading out onto terrain to score all the battle tactic points. And I don't think killing the Annihilators actually does much good, but why not try anyway? And that's going to be about it. So you can see it started off well, and then suddenly on this turn here, where I didn't score many of the objectives, and my opponent from that point on scored big in every turn, the issue was I didn't have the bodies to get around the board and contest everything. And I heavily committed over this side to bring down some of the big stuff. So would I have actually been better off heavily committing all the Annihilators into murdering Gut Rippers? I don't know, because then they would have been charged by Gobsprakk and maybe eaten, and charged by all the other monsters and eaten. So it's tricky. The issue I had actually in this game, other than not enough bodies, the Cruel Boys have a lot of dirty tricks, which isn't just me being mean. They do actually have a rule called that. And often what will happen is you'll charge into them, and then before you fight, a scroll will be unfurled, and about 10 different things that happen to you before you get to fight will be read out. So it'll be things like, oh, if I roll a 2 up, now you can strike last. Or if I roll a 3 up, now you take some damage. And there's a lot of things that happen when you're trying to accomplish anything against Cruel Boys. So once you've played them enough times and you know all these things, and you can account for them. Because, for example, I remember early, I think the prosecutors in the top left at the start of the game, they were made to strike last when they went in, which meant that 3 of them were dead before they got to strike, so disappointing for them. So strike last abilities are very dangerous to my army. I dish out strike last with the Grandhammers, but if someone puts it out on me, that's bad, because a lot of my units that want to be doing the killing can't necessarily stand up to much pain coming the other way. So, Cruel Boys, difficult matchup I found here. A lot of bodies and a lot of dirty tricks preventing me from murdering things as readily as I would like to. Okay, into the next round. Reaping Corruption. So, you just want to hold a lot of objectives. So, if you hold 2 of the 6, then you're going to be scoring 8 points each turn, which is fine. You don't necessarily need to hold more than your opponent, which would often require holding 4. So you don't necessarily want to be advancing out that far, so you can just settle for 2 and score 8 each turn. Then, if you're the underdog, then the Pulsing Energy, pick an objective, and then something will happen on it. Either you add 1 to casting and banishment rolls for each unit crossed by the line. Yeah, so you pick a line between 2 objectives, basically, and units that are passed across it will suffer the effect, or you can damage units that are crossed by the line instead. So it's not a huge deal, and you can set up your units in such a way that the enemy wouldn't be able to draw a line through them and damage them. And this is against Blood Knights. A lot of Blood Knights, so I'm going to pull up this list now. And here we go. So, how many Blood Knights are there in the Soulblight Gravelords, Knights of the Crimson Keep? It's 2 drops, so I've got more. And we have not a lot of units. I've gone for my same deployment style again. These 3 units are always going to hang around the teleporter. Lord Relictor is there, potentially to teleport one of them at some point, or himself. Doesn't really matter where he hangs out. And these 2 probably like to go through the portal at some point. And the Shield Annihilators and Vandus just hanging out anywhere, really. It doesn't really matter as long as they don't die, because if everyone has taken the battle tactic where you have to kill 3 units, I'm just going to put it on these and then try and keep them alive. So, into the opposing army. We have Prince Vordry, the mighty zombie dragon riding vampire of Doom. Other than that, there is a reinforced unit of Blood Knights, 2 non-reinforced units of Blood Knights, which are acting as screens in this deployment. There's a Vampire Lord and Nightmare Steed, who I think is the one that allows friendly units to charge or reroll charges with him, something like that. And then there's a reinforced unit of Blood Knights there as well. So, loads of Blood Knights. Good news is, they rely on the charge to do a lot of their cool stuff. So I'm thinking, actually, this isn't bad, because any of these things are a valid target for Annihilators. If I can clear out the small units, if I can get into any of this meat, the Annihilators should have a good time there. It's a lot of wounds to get through, but there's a lot of wounds that can be dished out by the Annihilators as well, especially with the +1 attack once per battle from Gardas. So, let's see what happens here then. So I've quest marked this objective. Now, quest marking an objective isn't just thinking which one am I likely to get get my ward save. It's also which objective would I like the enemy to be forced to stay on to prevent me teleporting to it. That's something to consider as well. Because often you'll find that whichever one you pick, the enemy will put something cheap there. But this army doesn't really have anything cheap that can sit back. So if everything advances and I just get to teleport onto it, that's fine. But it will cause them to slow their advance perhaps and leave something dangling back, which means I have to fight less of them at once. So, we've put the treasure, because obviously my opponent's got the same battle tactics as me, because I think almost every game now is the same ones that I have. So I don't know if that means that they're just unbalanced and these are clearly the best, or the current meta suggests that they're the best, or everyone just thinks they are because we haven't tried the others yet. So, if we do end up in a case where everyone is selecting the same 2 sets of battle tactics every time, because that's just easier to achieve, then I would suggest maybe that tournaments could consider mandating that perhaps you have to bring 3, and you use 2 in each game still, but you have to use each one at least 3 times over the course of the weekend, for example. So you add a bit of variety in that way. That's only if everyone is just bringing the same 2 over and over. It's way too early to think about that right now. But that was something that crossed my mind when I saw that everyone was bringing the same thing. To add a bit of variety. Because otherwise it will get repetitive if those 2 are clearly the best, which will be determined over the next few months, I imagine. So, my opponent has chosen the big dragon and the 2 mega units of Blood Knights, which is a reasonable thing to do because they're going to be the hardest to kill. I'm going first. My opponent has made me go first. I'm going to put Annihilators straight onto one of the objectives. I've put Vandus straight onto an objective. And I've also sent the Prosecutors straight in as well. First of all, they rolled a 111 on their charge. And I didn't like that, so I re-rolled it and got a much better roll. Lord Relictor is there to teleport them to safety. They went into the front unit of Blood Knights, the screen, which I want to get rid of so I can get the Annihilators into the even meatier units. And they do kill 1 and a bit. And they lose 1 or 2 in retaliation, which I can live with. I'm going to teleport them to safety anyway, next turn. And I score 10 points because I hold objectives. I hold more than my opponent. So, we'll take that as a start. Turn 1 for the enemy. The Prosecutors are immediately teleported away automatically by the Lord Relictor with the once per game auto prayer of a 7 to behind this piece of terrain where it's safe, and then they can move to the teleporter and teleport somewhere else later and do the same thing again. So you get 2 for the price of 1, or really for the price of a Lord Relictor because he's going to get killed. You can do the same thing with the Knight Relictor for a very tiny amount less points. The problem is he doesn't get +1 on prayers, so in future turns, if you want to be still casting prayers, then the Lord is just better. So if you really need those 10 points to afford something else, then downgrade. But if you've got them to spare, then you might as well take the Lord. And this is an enemy charge, which means, so if we go back here, there is no reason at all for these Quest of Soulsworn to be in this spot. They could just be hugging the back table edge, because so many armies have such obscene threat range in this game now, including Prosecutors, for the record. But this unit, there's no reason for them to be there. All I'm looking at is the enemy is really far away, so it's safe there. That was my thinking. Because if I thought for 1 second that the enemy would be able to charge and trail all the way down here on a long charge, I could have just hugged the back edge. There's no reason for them to be there whatsoever. and you'll see me actually change my deployment tactics in upcoming games, realizing that just because it looks like a long way, it's absolutely nothing in this game. If you're not hugging the back edge, then you're just giving the enemy long charges. So you have to maximize the filth and just stay as far away as possible. Don't just position them in such a way that looks like it's a long charge, because they charge into the Lord Relictor and then dangle all the way down here, hoping that someone else will kill the Lord Relictor first, and then they're able to pile in and hit the Questors. So what happens is that the Relictor actually survives the smaller unit first, so something else has to try and kill him then. And he does die eventually, but when this unit piles in, because it wasn't a full-on charge all the way down here, not all of them could fight, so I only lose a couple of Questors, which is okay, and they're within range of the teleport chamber, which means they can be teleported away next turn, potentially. And I hit back and do a little bit of damage as well. So, I could also leave them in combat, which will pin these Blood Knights here, so I can charge them with other things, so we'll see if I want to do that. My opponent scores 10 for the objectives, and another 5 for taking an objective off me for a battle tactic. And into my turn now, and you can see I've blasted the Prosecutors into these Blood Knights for their second wind, and they do some reasonable damage there, and then lose a few back. And you can also see Vandus went into them as well. So there's only 4 of those Blood Knights left actually, so that's looking quite good. I've not brought down any Annihilators yet. I used the portal to teleport the Questors onto an objective that didn't have anyone on it. This isn't just so I can score points now. It's also so that it's going to draw some of the enemy back to deal with them. And they'll be especially tempting because they're not on their quest-marked objective, which is here, which the enemy are kind of camped on. There was nowhere too tempting to bring the Annihilators down yet, because there's no space particularly back here that's seemed like a great spot for me. And so I was thinking about going like here. The problem is, I think at least one of these units would redeploy away from me. I might not reach them both. And anyone that fails the charge there is totally out of the game. As we found in the first game, even when they make the charge, if it's out on the flank and nowhere near the centre, they're kind of stuck there for the rest of the game, not contributing. So, on this occasion, I think I felt the space was too limited to do what I wanted to do, so I'm going to save them until I've cleared out some more stuff. And I have taken an objective off my opponent, so I'm going to score 15 points, which is nice. I've whittled down this unit of Blood Knights heavily, which are one of the treasure carrying units. The other two are these two. And the Questors have rallied someone back as we continue through the game. My opponent is now doing kind of what I want to do, which is spread out, but is also doing what I do not want them to do, which is to spread out while putting down these 9-inch sticks everywhere to make sure there's nowhere I can land. So you can see that the vampire on Steed is heading down here as well, eyeing up Vandus. Bordry is eyeing up the Questors, who redeploy away, hoping he'll fail his charge now. And it may not look great for the Stormcast, but my entire hard-hitting force is not come down yet. And now the enemy are getting quite spread out, so I might be able to hit them in a concentrated way and deal with something without having to also deal with the enemy units hitting me back. So we'll see if that works out. So we've got the small unit of Blood Knights get into the Prosecutors, the vampire on the Steed gets into Vandus. Bordry, I think, fails the charge into the Questors, so that keeps them alive, and they've still got a teleport left as well, so he's kind of stuck out here now, which I like. Some of the Blood Knights go down. I think Vandus killed a couple of them, so there's only 2 left. Prosecutors get killed now, and Vandus takes some damage, but he's not dead, so he's locking them down. So, my opponent scores 10, so we are tied now, and I get priority in round 3. So in this situation, it's got to be time to bring down the Annihilators, and I just need to get them in and kill something in a position that isn't supported by the rest of the enemy units. I've got these guys locked down, The only real places I can land, I've got a small landing place there, which isn't enough for both units. This area is also in a similar boat, because there's a bit of space here, but not really enough. Here is an option as well, but that's quite far away from this unit, because this one is blocking off any closer attempts. So, into my turn. If I leave it any longer, the enemy could just stay in this position, though. There's no need for them to break this formation if it's blocking off my landing zones. So I bring everything down in that spot I just mentioned. I teleport the Questors away using their own teleportability onto this distant objective, keeping them safe, and the Annihilators are down. Vandus is still in combat. He was actually thinking about running away, but because he was down to 3 wounds, he could just get killed from running. So, the big unit of Blood Knights actually move away from the Annihilators. They redeploy and roll a 5, which is not what you want to see. But one unit does get into the small unit of Blood Knights, though, and completely obliterates them. Well, they haven't yet, but you'll see in a moment. So Vandus takes down... I think he took down another Blood Knight before he gets killed. Yeah, that unit of Blood Knights, actually, that is one unit. This is a treasure unit, and it's down to 1 wound. But Vandus couldn't quite do the final wound to kill it. And with all-out attack and finest hour on him, the Annihilators that made it in massacre the 5 Blood Knights easily. And now we've got the Annihilators, but if I don't make a good D3 move when I land with each unit, and then the enemy redeploys away 5, it's always going to be tricky, unfortunately. And even then, I was only 1 inch away from making the long charge with this unit of 6 into the 10 Blood Knights, which would have been very spicy indeed. That would have been a lot of Annihilator attacks. You see how easily they dealt with 5. 10, maybe I wouldn't have killed all of them, but they would have lost a lot of Blood Knights there, I think. But 1 inch short on the charge. So if they'd only redeployed away 4, I would have caught them, and that would have made it very interesting. Vandus is being pummeled left and right, and he is dead. And this 1 Blood Knight in the unit with 1 wound left is denying me 5 victory points right now. Okay, so at this stage, the enemy are kind of up, and fighting Annihilators might not be what they want to do. So they have the choice to just hide from me now, because they're faster than me. Annihilators are very slow. The Lord Relictor is... Did the Lord Relictor get killed yet? Not sure. So I score 8 points. On to my opponent's turn. Going to try and beat up my terrain, which is very mean, and then stay out of my threat range. I think the Lord Relictor's dead at this stage. Surely. Beating up my terrain a bit and staying away. In my turn, I bring in 3 fresh prosecutors. So this is the unit that has now rallied a model back that are worth 5 victory points to me. So I actually bring in a unit of 3 prosecutors back from the dead in this area here. They make the charge into the 2 of them. Can they get me some victory points? No, they leave 1 alive on 2 wounds. But I do get a battle tactic this turn as well. And then it's my opponent's turn. So you can see I've been shuffling my shield Annihilators away. These 2 units are both worth 5 victory points if they get killed. So I'm using the Annihilators to just block the path to them now. And yes. Just driving the point home that that Blood Knight is still alive. My opponent scores 10 points for that round, just from being on more objectives than me. And then in my turn, you can see that I think these Annihilators got shot. I think Vordry has got some kind of shooting attack. Then the Blood Knights finally decide it's time to engage the Annihilators, send everyone in, start massacring. I think this is the guy, the vampire on steed, that gives them a reroll charge, and he also gets one, which is cool. Anything that normally costs a command point that you just get to do is always amazing, which is one of the few positives that Bastion has, by the way, in his rules, giving all-out attack for free, because command points aren't being thrown around willy-nilly anymore. The prosecutors are now getting surrounded as they try desperately to finish off this 1 vampire on a horse to get me 5 victory points. And Vordry is staying out of range of the Annihilators so he doesn't get slapped. And because these Annihilators actually get to strike first, look what they do. They kill, I think it was 7 Blood Knights with their attacks. And that's without any bonuses from Gardas, because that would have been previously. So with no bonuses at all, they kill 7 Blood Knights with one swing. That's because these guys needed to go first to hit the Prosecutors to stop this one model from dying and giving away 5 victory points. So because of that, 7 Blood Knights get killed. But the Prosecutors do go down, so this guy is going to survive, which is very annoying. Alive on 1 wound again, I think. Then the Annihilators, or Gardas gets killed up here, certainly, and these Annihilators take some hits back from the enemy down there. And they all eventually get killed by a combination of the Vampire and the remaining Blood Knights. So you can see that if the Annihilators get in and get to attack, they absolutely wipe the floor with things. But the problem is they're slow and the delivery mechanism is imperfect. Especially if the enemy has screens, which is what the Prosecutors are supposed to deal with. So it's not a particularly big gap though, as we approach the end of the game. And Vordry is kind of stuck fighting all these guys for the time being. The Imperator is dead. Blood Knights making their way towards the Shield Annihilators in the corner to try and get the points there. And that was my turn, so I just scored 7. And I redeploy and hide in the corner as far as possible away from the Blood Knights there. And they get to the objective, but they don't get to charge me. However, because stealing the objective is also a battle tactic that they could achieve, I thought, well, I'm going to lose anyway, so why not just countercharge them and try and kill them and deny them some points that they would have got for taking this objective. So the Shield Annihilators countercharge in, don't quite kill enough though, and the other Annihilators go down, but it doesn't have any effect on the game scoring. So that's what's left at the end. Quest doors are still fine, Shield Annihilator's still alive. And elements of that game worked very well, but obviously the final result, not ideal. It was only quite a small loss though. What I'm finding actually is that with all the extra victory points available now, you can score 80 in a game. These dice aren't really cutting it anymore to display how many points were scored. It's too much going on here. So to the eye, you can't just glance over and see who's winning. So I need to come up with a better system for that as well. Maybe like a little whiteboard with a marker to show how many points people have got rather than dice displaying it. Someone asked me why I don't take screen captures of the Malarkey page that tracks the scoring, but the issue is, on my phone it saves it into a different folder when you do that, compared to the camera. Which means that it's going to be awkward to line up the photos in the right place at the end. So I like to just keep everything with photography. So I might invest in a little tiny whiteboard and do it that way. I think that would be easier. So let's see. I'm just firing up the right bit of the app here to see what I'm doing. So the first game, which was against the Cruel Boys, I lost 50 points to 69. And the second game, slightly closer, I got 51, my opponent got 65. So I haven't been obliterated in either of those games, but it felt like there was something lacking. In this game, my opponent did a good job screening out places for the Annihilators to land. And obviously if you've got a list with models that take up a lot of space, it's easier to do that. If you've got a list that can, for example, drop manifestations around, it's also easier to do that. And looking back, was my chance... Let me go back and have another look, because I'm trying to think why I didn't just go big or go home and drop down behind the enemy at that one stage. Let me see. I know we're going back quite a long way here, but there was that one point. And it was... I think it's coming up now. It's before this guy retreats. So, in fact, I'm going to... So you don't have to look at these flashing images non-stop. I'm just going to bring up the episode thumbnail while I find the right place. There we go. So, unless I'm missing something, maybe I should have just dropped behind here and not worried about them redeploying away and being stuck at the back. Because I could have got into 2 succulent, juicy, destroyable units there. So maybe that was the time to do it. And maybe this is the only time that my opponent didn't fully close up the gaps, unless there's something I'm not seeing that was preventing it here. Or maybe at the time there was. Maybe a unit like moved since, or redeployed or something after this picture was taken. Or before it was taken, should I say. So maybe there was something blocking it. It looks like there's a bit of a gap there that they could drop into. So possibly that was the time. If my opponent watches this, maybe we can be reminded whether there was something else going on and a reason as to not do that. Maybe there was something else going on at the back. Okay, you can look at this picture again while I zoom back to where we were, so you don't have to see those flashing pictures. And we'll go into game 3, which is a spicy one. And almost there. Okay, here we go. So, linked ley lines. In this one, you get extra points if you draw a line between objectives you control. So you need the center one, and then 2 of the same color, basically. Boop or boop. Across this way or across that way. And that's how you get maximum points. And there's quite a bit of granularity to the scoring in this one, so if you're the kind of person that wants to manipulate your victory point output so that you can remain the underdog or prevent someone from dropping, for example, more than 11 points behind, which is, I think, the threshold for taking an unpunished double turn, then maybe this is one where you can really fiddle with the scoring a bit, because you get 3 for an objective, 3 for a second one, 2 for controlling a pair, and 2 for controlling all the objectives in a line. So these 4 are really tied to doing up or sideways. And what's this? 4 bloodthirsters and a slaughter priest. Yes, that is exactly what I'm facing. And my first thought is, great, there's no screens. My second thought is, uh-oh, I bet they have an obscenely long threat range. I better hug the back of the table with everything, because I keep getting caught out by lazily deploying like 3 inches up and then being charged by things early in the game. So everything is hugging the table edge from now on. And why not? 4 bloodthirsters. So it's the usual setup on the table. And we've got... I'm going to pull up that list actually, because they're not all the same bloodthirster. Some of them are the same, but not all of them. So, let me see. Trying to open the list here. There we go. So, it's 4 drops. There is the Bloodthirster of Unfettered Fury, which I think is the orange one, but don't quote me on that, because I'm not 100% sure. I know that the white one can... I think it's the white one that gives other Bloodthirsters a 3 dice charge, possibly. I don't know which one that is. And then there are 2 Bloodthirsters of Insensate Rage, which are the red ones, I think. They're the same. Orange one and white one. So, one of them, I think, switches off hero ward saves, if I'm right. Is that right? But really, they all just murder things. They've got a few attacks, but they're very powerful attacks. And you do not want to be hit by them. But they are in that bracket of the perfect target for Annihilators. Anything that's between like 10 and 20 wounds with a reasonable armor save. Theirs isn't actually very good. I think it's 4s and a ward save on top of that. So that is the kind of thing Annihilators will generally eat for breakfast. Because I think they're like 16 or 18 wounds each, which is the sweet spot. Because it's a worthy target, like 400 points or 450 points for some of them. So definitely worth throwing Annihilators into them. And if you can put Strike Last on them as well by rolling an 8 or more on the charge, that's the dream. So these are kind of the perfect targets. Mega Gargants, not ideal, because you're definitely not going to do 40 wounds in one turn, and then they'll hit back and maybe wipe out your unit. Bloodthirster, you definitely can kill them in one go, with the number of wounds. Like Bloodthirsters or Kragnos or most dragons, the kind of thing that 6 Grandhammer Annihilators definitely can one-shot. So, I am giving away first turn to my opponent, because I want the chance of a double. I do not want to get doubled by 4 Bloodthirsters. That would be bad. So, they're all moving up onto the objectives. And that's the end of the turn. Very quick first turn for the Bloodthirsters. There is a manifestation been dropped by the Slaughter Priest behind them to stop me peering back there. So, the interesting thing with the Bloodthirsters and Khorne in general is that you can't necessarily rely on charging them, even though Khorne, the god, should be encouraging combat. Some of the abilities that Khorne grants allow you to actually move away from the possibility of combat. So, when I drop down in front of these Bloodthirsters here, I would then use the Imperatant to move forward D3, so potentially I might be 6 inches away from them. They can then redeploy, and then they can use a Blood Tithe point to move away or towards 3 inches. So, depending what they roll in the redeploy, if they redeploy a couple of inches, then they can use the Blood Tithe to move into combat and take away any charge bonuses, or prevent me from charging a different one, and just like use one to tie up multiple units. On the other hand, they can redeploy and use Blood Tithe to move away even further, so they can get like a super redeploy and prevent being charged in the first place, but you can only do that with one. You could redeploy one, Blood Tithe the other, make it difficult to charge any of them, maybe. So it's tricky to actually get the charges you want into them, because if you come too close, they can Blood Tithe into you and then take away your charge bonuses. If you're too far away, they can Blood Tithe and redeploy away from you, so that you just can't charge them at all. So they're pretty good at fighting on their terms generally, so we'll see how it goes. Into my turn. Well, you can see the Annihilators got in. Both units, in fact. And this is before combat I took the pictures, and Gardas gets in as well. So, I dropped them all down. They actually redeployed and moved away from me, thinking that maybe they don't want to fight, and they don't want to get charged, certainly by Annihilators, but then I just went and rolled high enough on the charges anyway. With the +1 from Gardas, that definitely helped. So they both got in, and we'll see what happens as a result of that. So I've also thrown the Prosecutors into another Bloodthirster, because I've put Strike Last onto this one, because they rolled high enough on the charge. I've put Strike Last onto the white one, because they rolled high enough on their charge. Gardas made it into this one, Prosecutors made it into this one with Finest Hour through the portal. So, I just decided, because the Prosecutors, once everyone else made the charge, I wasn't sure whether to send them in or not. Because I've got this guy engaged in combat as well. So he could potentially pile in and fight the Annihilators if I choose to go first with the Prosecutors. But they do currently have a ward save because Gardas is close by. So maybe the Bloodthirster wouldn't want to hit them first. Maybe he'd try and split the attacks, but then if you do that, you're risking not killing anything. And if you split the attacks, they're still having the ward save because Gardas isn't dead yet. So I decide, let's just throw everything in. Let's make it a quick game. Either everyone will go in, do nothing and die, or I will just murder all the Bloodthirsters immediately. So Prosecutors have also gone in, and I am going to activate them first with Finest Hour, because if they get a swing back at them, they're only 2 wounds each. So a little bit fragile. So you can see that the white Bloodthirster is dead. The Annihilators just whomp that guy in the head. Gardas got killed by this one though, who put all his attacks into Gardas, which I wasn't expecting. And then the one out on the right gets killed by the other 6 Annihilators as well. So it's just the extra attack granted to them by Gardas is such a big deal, because there's so many dice thrown around, and I all-out attacked with this one as well. I didn't all-out attack with this unit, because there are things that can still punch them, potentially, at the time. The Prosecutors here did some decent damage to this Bloodthirster, but he's still got some wounds left. And then when he hit back, he just missed all his attacks into them, so they haven't even lost a single Prosecutor yet. So, down to 2 Bloodthirsters, and all my meat is on the table now. And there's even a potential for the double turn. And if I get the double now, it would not be good news for the Forces of Khorne. So let's find out. First of all, I score 20 points because I take an objective off the enemy, and I also kill one of the treasure carrying units. So big points already. Who's going to get the turn? It's me, and it's pretty much game over based on that roll. Because 2 units of Annihilators massacre the Slaughter Priest and the other Bloodthirster, and the Prosecutors do more damage to this one. The Questors don't quite make their charge to join in, so it's just about still alive for now. And then this Bloodthirster fails with its attacks again and only kills one of them. So it is basically game over, but there is a slither of hope, because if this Bloodthirster can kill more units, then potentially that can build up enough Blood Tithe points to bring back another Bloodthirster, which could turn things. So it's not quite over yet, but I think it still is. So, 10 points for me there. I took the double, so I can't do any battle tactics yet, but that's fine. I've got plenty of time to do those. And you can see this is the dream time to take a double turn, because I've still got 3 more turns to rack up those extra battle tactics that I'm currently missing. And in the enemy turn, the Bloodthirster just gets killed. Kills a couple more Prosecutors, then dies. So there's not enough Blood Tithe points to bring back another Bloodthirster. There's only enough to do an attack on somebody who's got 8 wounds or less. And there are no Khorne models left on the table. So this guy actually takes... Vandus takes a wound, I think, from the special attack, from the Blood Tithe points. And because there's nobody left to contest, I can just rack up maximum points for the rest of the game. So the game took about 40 minutes in total of the 3 hours you get for the round. And really, my opponent just got 1 turn to move forwards and then just had to watch me roll dice and then make saves. So very sad times for the Bloodthirsters there. It is a good matchup for me, I think, if I make the charges. If I don't make the charges, it's actually a bad matchup, because the Bloodthirsters are certainly capable of killing Annihilators that are sitting out there in the open. So if I make the charges, they are doomed, though, big time. And you've got to feel bad for the Bloodthirsters. It's a weird thing to say, but I think it's valid in this case. So not much was done back to me. At one stage, the Annihilators made one of the Bloodthirsters make 39 ward saves. And he has 18 wounds, and I think it's a 5-up ward. As you can imagine, it didn't survive making 39 ward saves. But that is the power of the Annihilators when they get those charges in. So, a complete massacre. And I got maximum points. So that is 80 points to 10. Into the next game. So, into round 4. Which I'm going to pull open on the app here. And it's Roiling Roots. So, on this one, the scoring is very straightforward. 5 victory points for 1 objective. 3 more if you control any pairs. So you can see there's the blue pair. The green pair are quite close together, so that's going to be a common one that people try and get. It's less of a position on the table to control just this small area in the middle. If you're an army that likes to dominate the centre, that's a good one. And then these 2 flank ones for any armies that kind of want to stay out of the fight, maybe. And then 2 more if you control more than your opponent. So very straightforward. And then the Tangling Tendrils. If you're the underdog, pick a pair of objectives, and every unit that is contesting those objectives has strike last. So, that is very interesting, because you're also giving it to your own units. So if you can fight from just outside of the objective against an enemy that's on it, you'll put strike last on them. So that is very interesting. And we're up against Seraphon. So, let me find that list now. Here we go. Opening that list up now. So we have got, you can see my deployment's pretty much the same thing. The 3 units that normally hang around together, and Vandus and the Shield Annihilators slightly separate, and then the usual 4 units up in the sky. And by this stage I'm thinking, The Annihilators are really working. The shield Annihilators are cheap, but I'm not sure they're accomplishing much. They're okay for sitting on an objective, but they're not really doing much. Vandus also isn't doing much, and he's in there because he's cool, and I was trying to put everything in the list to complement the Grandhammer Annihilators, but that hasn't really worked out yet, because I just don't have the slots in the sky to bring him down with everyone else. And the Prosecutors are normally going through the portal as well, so that isn't available. So if I was going to rebuild this list at this stage of the tournament, I think the Shield Annihilators would be candidates to be taken out. Vandus would definitely be taken out, which opens up about 320 points worth or so, which would allow, what can you get for that? A couple of Stormdrake Guard maybe, or what else? Some units of Liberators, maybe like a Chariot and some Liberators maybe. There are options. So more bodies potentially, or some spellcasting could possibly be brought in. Okay, I'm just going to mute myself while I let out a small cough. Okay, back into the fray. So, in the Seraphon list, we have got... Where's the general? Okay, so we've got Scourge of Gairan, Saurus on Old Blood, Saurus Old Blood on Carnosaur, which is 340 points of Scaly Menace. There are 2 units of Hunters of Huanchi, one with Dart Pipes, one with Starstone Bowlers. So one of them puts you -1 to wound, and one of you gives you -1 charge dice, I think, just for targeting you on a 2+. So those are skinks, and they're waiting in the lizardy heavens to be sent down onto the table at some point. In that regiment, there's also 2 units of Raptidon Chargers, which are the light cavalry with the skinks riding on them. Then, in another regiment, there is a Saurus Scar veteran on Agrodon, which is this one, I think, at the back. And then 2 reinforced units of Agrodon Lancers, so big, heavy lizard cavalry, 6 in each unit. Very scary. Cavalry obviously good on the charge. We're seeing a lot of cavalry lists. I resisted the urge to take a cavalry list because I wanted to run the Annihilators, but I do see the value in it. Those big bases on cavalry, not only because they're just faster than everyone else, cavalry, so it is an advantage there, but in this new potential theoretical meta that hasn't seemed to be materializing yet, of units hugging the obscuring terrain to escape shooting, cavalry are actually good at that, because with the big bases you can be within an inch of the terrain and still actually poke out a little bit and interact with other things. So we may see cavalry doing the rounds at the moment. Oh, there's a sneeze coming on. Okay, it was 2 sneezes, in fact. Okay, so we've got a lot of cavalry that wants to charge me. And there's the skinks sitting up there. And I get turn 1, which is thrust upon me by my opponent, probably to prevent me looking for a double. So I move on to some objectives. And I move the Shield Annihilators. Oh, you can see, I'm not even talking about battle tactics anymore, because everyone's just picking the same 2, so we know what they are. So I'm hiding the Shield Annihilators in the terrain so that those skinks can't drop down and shoot blowpipes at them or anything. So, the light cavalry are clearly chaff. The Annihilators don't want to be dealing with that, so we're going to use the Prosecutors, send them in, take out 1 unit of chaff, then teleport them away next turn. So that's exactly what happens. Put Finest Hour on them, kill a unit of chaff, and then on my turn they're going to be teleported away. I actually had the option, because of the charge roll that I made was quite high, I had the option to get to the heavy cavalry. But I thought, you know what, they might just bounce the attacks, because they're only Rend 1, the Prosecutors. Those attacks could just bounce off the heavy cavalry, and I've just wasted their time, and they're now out of range to be teleported. So I didn't risk it, I just played it safe, took out the chaff unit, and now they're going to be teleported away. So, I'm on the objectives. We're now clearing out chaff, waiting for the Annihilators to come down. 7 points for me, because I do not hold any pairs of objectives. Into my opponent's turn 1. The prosecutors are teleported away to safety, and everyone surrounds the Lord Relictor. And the... which ones are these? These are the Saurus Guard. I don't know if I mentioned them, actually. So they're hanging out over here, heading for an objective. The Lord Relictor has all that defense put on him. And it actually keeps him alive, because he is killed, but then comes back to life on 1 wound, I think. With the upgrade that I gave him. And my opponent did take an objective off me, so scores points there. So actually gets... should that be 12? Possibly. Okay, then my opponent actually gets the instant double turn. So the light cavalry are going after the questors. The heavy cavalry are also going after the questors. And I'm not actually too disappointed about this, because the units I have on the table, if I can keep them safe, if I can keep the prosecutors safe, the questors can stand up to a bit of punishment. But even if they die, I think that's a decent price to pay for spreading the enemy out, and also potentially giving me a future double turn, which is great for Annihilators. So I don't mind so much this. Some skinks drop down near Vander's Hammerhand, and they're going to fire their blowpipes at him. I think they were actually already down on the table and they just moved over here, because they wouldn't have been able to drop down within 9. So they were dropping down somewhere else, and now they've moved this way. So that looks like the questors are dead. But thankfully, I was able to redeploy my prosecutors away and roll quite high so they don't get charged. But the questors do get taken out, which I can live with, because a fresh unit of 3 can come in as well. And now we've got the enemy spread out and ready to be crushed. So it's about to be Annihilator o'clock. Where is your prime spot for Annihilators? Feel free, if you're watching this later, to pause the video and let me know in the comments where you would put the Annihilators here. So the options are, we could go here, which gives me the option of charging into any one of these 3 units. Any one of them can redeploy, and then if you hit one, of course, maybe you can pile in and hit multiples. I could come down here and hit the 2 cavalry units. Up here and hit the general and this cavalry unit. So where would you go with your Annihilator bomb? So 10 points to my opponent, into my turn 2. Well, you can see that what I actually went for was up here. So 1 unit of Annihilators gets into the Agrodon Lancers, and the other unit of Annihilators gets into... hold on, let's go back here. So I think I got into the Carnosaur redeployed away. So they got into the character that was there as well, I think. So, or is that the character? I might be misremembering that, actually. So there's the light cav there. Let's go back. Okay, this one got into the heavy cav. This is heavy as well. How many units of those have we got? Agrodon Lancers. I think there is just the 2 units of those. So this is the situation we were in. And this unit, part of it ended up here, I think. And Gardas got in. Oh, Gardas didn't make the charge. Okay, it's throwing me off because that's actually a dead body. This bit of the bomb failed its charge. That guy is not there. So 1 unit of Annihilators made it in here. That's what was throwing me off, that guy. So that just hasn't been shifted off the table yet. So this unit gets in, murders loads of the Agrodons. But because of the redeploy, I think made it a little bit harder. They didn't quite make it. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe I just failed the shortest charge anyway. The shield Annihilators are teleported by the Lord Relictor onto the back objective. And the prosecutors splattered into these Agrodon Lancers as well. and did some decent damage there. And yeah, Vandus killed the skinks on this objective, and it's looking okay. So I score a battle tactic for taking an objective off an enemy. So I'm up to 15 points for that round because, as you can see, I've got this objective, this one with the prosecutors, and this one with Vandus. And this one with the Annihilators. Who's going to go first in round 3? It's me. I take the double, and it's going to be a painful one for the enemy. We've got 3 Questors back to guard this objective. Vandus goes into the light cavalry, and almost dies actually, so maybe he's regretting that. The prosecutors, the teleport chamber teleports them out of combat so that they can make a fresh charge into the Agrodons again and not be on this objective, because my opponent put strike last onto this objective, so they didn't want to be touching it. And the Annihilators, the unit of 6 and Gardas, get into the Carnosaur and just whomp his head off. And then the other unit finish off the Agrodon Lancers there. Both the units ended up with strike last on them because they were touching this objective. So, I would say that's pretty much game over. There are very few lizards left. All my hard-hitting units are still there. So it's just a question of margin now. So I can't score any tactics this turn because it's a double, but I do get 10 points. Into my opponent's turn, and everyone's going after Vandus because there are victory points for finishing him off. As you can see, he's got the treasure. And he does get killed, sadly. But that's not going to affect too much. My opponent does score 10 points there. I go first in battle round 4 and send everyone in, send Annihilators and the Questors in to start whomping and wipe out plenty of the enemy. The Imperator is chasing down these guys. So what I'm looking at now, it's a rare situation that I may get to complete all my battle tactics. So I would have to kill this unit to complete 3 layers of the treasure carrying units. I would have to control every objective on the table to complete the other at the end. So I'm going to start moving my heroes towards this objective or towards the portal so they can be teleported onto it if this unit leaves. Or if they don't leave, I can teleport near and then try and charge them and take the objective that way, because I would need to hold all 6 at the end of the game and then get an extra 5 points. So that's what I'm going to try and do now, try and engineer that situation. So, in my opponent's round 4, not much is going to be accomplished. But you can see, scoring good points now. And Gardas is slowly working his way down towards the portal as the enemy have abandoned that objective now to take this one instead. And the Skinks are firing their poison darts and their blowpipes into the Annihilators, but not successfully. And Annihilators start dropping to this lone Agrodon. But you can see my opponent is still behind, despite picking up some decent points there. And goes first in round 5. But isn't able to accomplish too much. Charges into Gardas though. Then on my turn, only 5 points scored there. Then on my turn, I teleport the fresh reincarnated Questors onto this objective. I'm taking that. I get my Annihilators to charge in to the Saurus unit there, and then pile in onto the objective. So I've got all the objectives at the end of the game, satisfying another battle tactic condition, and then also cashing in one for killing one of the treasure units for the Sauruses. So there we go, a nice big score for me, and victory over the Seraphon. So where did that go right? So, obviously, I mentioned I was pleased to see my opponent take a double turn, and you saw why, because I was able to immediately hit back with an incredibly devastating double turn. On the turn they come down, if the Annihilators fail their charge, they're kind of sat there out in the open. If you charge them, there's a good chance you kill them and they do nothing. If I then get the double and get a second bite at it with the same Annihilators, there's a very good chance they get in because they're moving even closer to you now. And one of the units is probably already in combat if it hasn't wiped something out. If it has, then it's now in the midst of your army and can move towards you and also charge. So you're having to deal with lots of Annihilators because I ended up with a double. So I think possibly the Seraphon move could have been to just keep the turn order the same and make sure that you're never getting doubled by Annihilators. Could have been the idea there. But also, when you have the opportunity for a double, you look at what you can achieve, not just what your opponent could achieve in retaliation. So maybe there was more on offer that my opponent felt was a tempting proposition for taking the double. There was more that could be accomplished. If you can wipe out everything else in a turn, then it's not so bad. But I think the double was taken when... Is it when the Lord Relictor was still stuck in combat there? So I can understand thinking one of my key units is pinned down, I can't redeploy them. What if the Annihilators come in and kill me? But ultimately that's what ended up happening anyway. So I think the double turn with Annihilators is big, and if you can avoid facing that, you should probably try to. Bad Squiddo Games, obviously an Age of Sigmar expert, never get doubled by Annihilators, there you go. That is true. If you can avoid it, then do it. Okay, let's look at some of the armies from lunchtime that were laid out for voting for the coolest army awards. We've got some Caradron Overlords. And because the Caradron Overlords are about to get a new book, I have actually been inspired lately to continue painting my army, which was never a full enough army to be put on the table. I have actually got quite a lot done, but it's just not enough for a full army yet. So I think I might try and get those painted ready for the new book that comes out. I can run a different army. But they're not doing too well at the moment. They rely quite heavily on shooting, and shooting isn't quite as good right now. So they need a bit of a rework in their new book, I think. So very stylish. Then we've got some Kragnos-led Iron Jaws here, with big pigs. They look very dry and dusty, this army, don't they? Those bases. Then we've got the 4 Bloodthirsters, which did not do very well at the event, but in a game against the Caradron Overlords, they actually stomped them completely into the ground, but didn't do too well in the other games. I think this Bloodthirster list faced an Annihilator Stormcast list 3 times over the weekend, which you have to feel bad about. But Stormcast Annihilators were very popular. Got some Cities of Sigmar here, very stylish. Obviously just random splodges of snow on bases pushes an army up at least a couple of points. And Cities of Sigmar, there you go. They are very nice models. Then we've got some more Iron Jaws with the mighty Cabbage of Doom. Yellow Cabbage of Doom. Then we've got some more Stormcast. So, is this similar to mine? Not that similar. There are a few units in common. There's the Imperatant, the Annihilators, Gardas, the Soulsworn. There's also a Wizard. There's 2 units of Vigilors. There's Liberators, and there's Ionis Cryptborn as well. So it's like 50% similar to my list. Very stylish though. This is a very nice model. Ionis and Iridan are 2 big Stormcast models that I don't own, but they're both very cool. So maybe I will be tempted at some point to get one or both of those. It's kind of impossible to keep up with Stormcast, because every time there's a new edition they get about 10 new units, while other armies are lucky if they get 1 foot hero a year. So it's difficult to keep up. Although less difficult now that Stormcast are having half their units retired, so they can just be proxied as other things now. Sylvaneth, very nice. The basing scheme jumps out here immediately, of course, with that very stylish water effect. And nice and colourful army here. Very stylish and vibrant, which is what we like to see. And then, not vibrant at all, we've got, obviously, the Soulblight Gravelords. Not supposed to be vibrant, they're supposed to be dingy and evil. And then we've got some more of the same. More evil dinge. And then some lovely vibrant Stormcast again. Very, very bright. These would even put my Stormcast to shame, definitely, for brightness. Look at those wings. And the bases on the Prosecutors. I don't know what effect that is, but it's very bright and very cool. And some of them are extra tall because of these bases as well, of course. Into the next round, the final round, Bountiful Equinox. We have got... So, you get maximum points on this one if you hold 3 objectives in a triangle. So it's one of each colour, so it's like boom, 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 or boom, 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 or boom, 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 or boom, 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 like so. So one of each colour gets you maximum points. But having one of each colour only actually gets you 2 extra points. You score 8 points just for holding any 2 objectives. So again, they keep the scores relatively close by offering you big points just for the bare minimum, which is good. And then the underdog bonus is a bit of healing, but it can't bring models back to life apparently, so it's not that amazing. So, what am I up against? Kragnos. Let me just crack open the enemy list here, which is... where's it gone? There we go. Opening that. So, Kragnos, well known for dishing out a 3-dice charge to friendly units, which is very scary. So that's why all my units are pinned right back against the table edge. I almost considered not deploying my faction terrain, because it just gives the enemy something to charge in the first turn that's a bit closer to them. I also considered deploying my shield annihilators really further up as a screen, so that the enemy can't move too far forward and then charge from that point, because they would get stuck on the shield annihilators. I also considered putting the shield annihilators next to the Lord Relictor and automatically teleporting them 9 inches in front of the enemy in turn 1, which would definitely slow them down because they would have had to go round them. Just picking key units and putting them right in front 9 inches away, so they have to go the long way round to get to me, which is totally a valid thing to consider, and it's actually a reason I'm considering, for this very type of matchup, bringing a unit, for example, like Reinforced Liberators. Because if all this stuff gets into you in turn 1, you just get whomped. So maybe auto-teleporting on the enemy turn, if they take the first turn, 10 Liberators, stringing them out across the front of the enemy, turn 1. Maybe that's a worthy sacrifice to stop the enemy getting to you, and then if you're going second, you've then got the chance to maybe get a double in on their big monsters. That might be something I'll look at going forwards, actually. Definitely will consider doing that. So, we've got everyone else hanging out at the back, my usuals off the table. The enemy is Big Bad Kragnos with his funny little face. There is a unit of Brute Ragers. So these are the guys that can run and charge. Then there are there's a unit of 10 reinforced unit of Brutes here. So that is a 400 point unit. That's very powerful. There is a More Grunter. The non-hero version is this one here. Then the hero version, which is the Tusk boss, is this one with the guys hanging off the side as well. There is also a Weird Knob Shaman, who is in amongst the brutes there. And who is this guy? What is this guy's name? Is that Zogrok Anvil Smasher? 170 points. Looks like it. So, let's see how it goes. I quest mark one of the objectives that the enemy are certainly going to be moving away from. And my opponent is going first. So, okay. As soon as, I think it was within 15 seconds of turn 1 starting, I thought, okay, I've lost this game already. Because I either didn't realise or just forgot that the Orcs have access to a spell that allows them to teleport a unit 24 inches. So, the logical thing to do then would be to not be hugging the back edge, but to maybe castle in the corner with a screen in front, or to go up level with the terrain so they can't get closer to a charge purely because they could charge terrain that doesn't stop them landing closer to it. Because as it stands now, they may be 9 inches away from my units, but they're going to have a 3-dice charge from Kragnos, and they only need about 6 inches to make it to the terrain, and then they can pile in to hit my other units. So, overlooking the fact that that spell existed means I believe at this stage that I've already lost. So we'll see whether that comes to fruition though. Also, this guy, I'm not sure what ability it was, but was able to move like halfway across the table in the hero phase. So I'm not sure what that ability is called, but that also caught me off guard. I didn't think that was going to happen either. So, those are just 2 things that I didn't ask at the start of the game. I remembered to ask about running and charging. I asked about 3 dice charges. I forgot to ask about teleports and about any bonus moves that happen. Apart from the extra 3-inch move that I think a unit gets anyway, but that's clearly more on this guy here. So really, you should just be asking, what is the turn 1 threat range of each unit 1 by 1? And obviously that would include teleports. So at that point, your opponent would then say, well, it's such and such inches, but it's also infinite because I can teleport. And if you don't ask that, more fool you. So they're both right up in my face now. I do redeploy the prosecutors a good distance away though, so hopefully they won't get hit as a result of my foolishness in not asking some of my opponent's rules. But unfortunately, they do get tagged in combat with the brutes, who are set up in this bizarre formation because to maintain coherency with this many models, each unit needs to be coherent with 2 others, so they have kind of these fat ends on the unit. Because they charge the terrain. And the big pig of doom also charged the terrain and is going to pile into the quest doors shortly. Let's see. Dancer says, BT battle tactic scoring isn't optional. You meet condition, you score. No rule gives permission to meet requirements and not score. Well, it doesn't say you can't score, but it doesn't necessarily say that you have to score. Because some of them just say must have been killed at some point in the battle. So my reading of that is that you can meet that condition later on. Is that not correct? People let me know in the chat, or in the comments anyway, what you think about that. Because the general consensus seems to be that you don't have to cash them in immediately if you meet the requirements. Let me know anyway, because that would be a big deal for how the game is generally played. And I will also do some diving into the rulebook afterwards as well. But for the purposes of this event, it's played, I think pretty much everyone was playing it in such a way that you can hold on to them even if you meet the requirements. You can delay cashing them until later, as long as it specifies must be done at some point in the battle, because some of them are kind of instant. It says this turn take an objective that the enemy had at the start of this turn. So you wouldn't be able to hold on to that because the conditions wouldn't be valid later. They're only valid in that turn, so you would have to cash it in then. Whereas some of them say an enemy unit was destroyed in the battle. So technically that could have happened at any point. Bad Squiddo says, I was just looking at your channel. Did you know the Chaos Army video has now overtook how to unblock a glue needle? Wow. So my most viewed videos of all time, my Old World Chaos Army, a video on that has now overtaken my video on unblocking a glue needle with fire. That is some impressive numbers. I do mean to do more videos that aren't just battle reports, because even though the people that like these really like them and watch huge chunks of time, the tactical insight and analysis and untold charisma that obviously flows out in these videos, but for just the general YouTube audience that just want to click something because it looks interesting in the thumbnail, generally aren't going to click a 3-hour battle report. They're way more likely going to go for, I made an old school Chaos Warriors army that's like 12 minutes long. That's way more clickable. So I do mean to do more videos like that. It's just a lot more time investment to edit them. Whereas these reports are games I've already played anyway, so it's just an additional couple of hours afterwards. Okay, so upside down photo there. The prosecutors are obliterated. The terrain is obliterated. The quest doors are obliterated. So, if I didn't think it was game over within 15 seconds, which I did by the way, then I'm probably thinking it is now, unless I get the Annihilators in and just obliterate the enemy completely with some nice charge rolls in my next turn. However, there's another thing I didn't know existed. This manifestation prevents you from dropping down within 9 inches of it, so I can't even drop in behind the enemy now. On the plus side, I could then drop in 9 inches away from that and charge it. So it's not the worst in the world, but that's another thing I just didn't realise existed, much like the 24-inch teleport for the orcs. So, 10 points for the enemy, but it's way more significant than that because I've lost half my army and my faction terrain already. So, turn 1. And Vandus and the Lord Relictor are just hiding because they're so terrified. And another manifestation is dropped down to stop me landing on anywhere around here with my teleporters. The Annihilators come down. We've got one unit goes in and kills the pig that was there. Hold on, let's go back and show you who was there. So this hero and this pig get torn to bits by the Annihilators, basically, who land around here, move towards them, get in, kill both of them. I also managed to pile in close enough to attack Kragnos with 2 of them, and do 8 wounds to Kragnos with just 2 Annihilators. So imagine if a full unit got into him. That's just 1/3 of that unit's output does half his wounds. So Kragnos, feeling pretty good about himself that he's still alive now. At this stage, if I get the double, Kragnos is dead. And that's my one chance to turn the game around. If I don't get the double, I think it's definitely game over, because everyone will charge in and kill my Annihilators, and that's all my hitting power gone, and I don't really have much left. But if I do get that double, Kragnos is already locked in combat with this unit of 6. This unit of 3 now, after some of them died. There's a unit of 6 here, untouched. There's Gardas. Kragnos could very definitely go down. I may not even need all of them involved in that. I could possibly charge them in here and kind of string them out between 2 units and do more damage to someone else as well. Although just throwing everyone into Kragnos is always tempting. But I do not get the double. My opponent is going next and throws out more manifestations around the place and is going to charge everything into my Annihilators, just lining everybody up, ready to charge in. The big pig goes in, the Ragers go in, the Brutes go in, and I countercharge with my shield Annihilators actually, because why not? Might as well throw everyone in. If we're all about to die, let's all go down, swing in, and try and do what we can. And I all out defense the Annihilators. They get hit by the Ragers, which my opponent did tell me was the bait so that Kragnos could then go and attack them. But it's not really the kind of bait that you can ignore, because if you don't all out defense, the Ragers could very definitely put a huge dent in that unit. And if I don't use all out defense on them, because it's wasted, because it's only used on one unit's attacks now, and Kragnos could just decide to attack someone else instead. It doesn't necessarily have to go for them. So I felt like it was the right time to use it, because it's no good saving the all-out defense for Kragnos if most of the unit's dead before he even gets to them. So they all die in that unit, but you'll see that this unit managed to swing and take down the Kragmeister himself, so Kragnos is dead, so we've got a moral victory there. And then the pig kills the shield Annihilators, who are the ones that are designed to survive with the 2+ save. They still get killed. And Gardas is left on his own in the middle of everything else with these 3 guys, who are still up for now, but the Brutes then pile into them and kill them. So at this stage, it's 100% game over, so it's just about racking up points for my opponent and me trying to maximise my points. So trying to kill the treasure units, and Gardas gets killed, but I've got the Imperatant, I've got Vandus, who was going to actually try and take this objective by charging the manifestation, but then there was a counter spell that teleported the orcs over here as well, so it wasn't worth trying that anymore. And my Lord Relictor is just hiding out somewhere for the time being, scoring points. So I am racking up points though, very steadily, and then my opponent goes first in round 3. My Relictor teleports himself on the enemy turn to safety, and Vandus redeploys away to make it harder for the Brutes to charge him. The pig is going after the Lord Imperatant. Vandus gets charged and killed. Imperatant gets charged and killed, so we're down to the Relictor, and I can bring 1 unit back to life at some point. So, into my turn 3, I bring in 3 Prosecutors to try and finish off this pig, which is worth 5 victory points, because it's one of the treasure units. They make it, but they don't quite kill him. The Relictor tried to teleport over there to kill him as well, but he redeployed away, so only the Prosecutors were able to reach him. And that's sad, but I do get 5 points for holding an objective. I then take the double, because I'm far enough behind where I won't be punished for it. And the Relictor teleports himself over to the right side of the table, charges the Orc Shaman, kills him, so all the manifestations now disappear, which is good. Prosecutors just about fail to kill the pig and then get killed though. So I'm scoring nice points with the Relictor on his own, so he gets another 5. In the opponent's turn, they're just spreading out, taking all the objectives. With a redeploy, they now need a 12 to charge the Lord Relictor with the Brutes, and they roll a double 6. So in they go, and they kill him. So that's the end. So maximum points there over the last few turns for the Orcs. And that did not go very well. So it was over within 15 seconds, I feel, but only just. So when you're asking your questions at the start of the game, such as who can make a 3-dice charge, who can run and charge, and so on, make sure to also ask if they have any teleports. I feel like I usually ask that, but I probably forgot this time. And ask about pre-game or hero phase moves as well, any extra move shenanigans they have. Be very specific so you get all the information. Because I felt completely unprepared for that onslaught of orcs that was like 6 inches from my lines within 10 seconds of the game starting. So that did not go well. But even then, the power of the Annihilators is shown though, because had I got that double, that game was probably not over, but it was still close to it. So Annihilators, definitely the MVPs of the event for me. Vandus didn't justify his position in the list at all. Not that I necessarily expected him to, but I just wanted to build everything in the list to support the Annihilators, and in theory he can fight and then bring them in, but he was just never in the same fight as them, so it never came up. And he will definitely come out the list. Let me crack open my Age of Sigmar app and have a look at the list here to see what else I could put in. So let me know as well what kind of Stormcast units you think could come into this list. If we kick out Vandus immediately from the list, let's do that. And we kick out the Shield Annihilators, who are not essential to the game plan, then that frees up 320 points in the list. And we're currently on 3 regiments. So we could even go up to 4 regiments by bringing in another hero. So let's see what we could add. We could add a unit to someone else's regiment as well. So 320 points, what do we get for that? We could get 3 units of Liberators, or 2 units of Liberators and some Vanquishers. We could get 2 units of Reclusians, or like a reinforced unit of Prosecutors or Reclusians or something like that. Vigilors would be less than half of those points, so we could bring in Vigilors for a bit of shooting and something else. We could get a Stormstrike Chariot, is only 130, so that would still leave a big chunk of points as well. In terms of heroes, let's have a look. So we've got the Celestant Prime, who is within that points bracket. We could Iridan the Witness, actually. If I had him, I could take one of those, which is probably a great choice, but it would require buying and painting one, which is a significant investment, and I'm not sure if I've got the time to paint one right now. There's a lot in my painting queue. We've also got... who else? We can't afford any of the big dragons. We could afford Yndrasta or Bastion, but I feel like they're both overpointed, unfortunately. We could bring in a wizard. We could bring in the Knight Arcanum, who's only 120 points, which would leave 200 points for something else. For something else maybe hard-hitting. We could bring in... let's see. How much are the Stormdrake Guard? So I build a list that wants to include them. I feel like they're about 320. I don't know if any of the characters I've got in this list can actually take them, but it's worth having a look at, because I could switch around the characters a bit. But in this specific list, I feel like the character balance is quite good outside of Vandus. So I'll have a play around anyway with the different combos of stuff I can add in. Let me know what you think. I'll tell you what I've got available, though, to give you some idea. So I've got Long Strikes, I've got Praetors, I've got Liberators, Vanquishers, Storm Coven, Knight Arcanum, Concussors, Fulminators, Tempesters, Vanguard Paladors, I've got all kinds of different heroes. I've got Bastion, Yndrasta, Vexilor, Veritant. I've got Stardrake, I've got Krondis. I've got lots of retired units now as well, like the Ballistas, which aren't really useful for anything anymore. I've got Chariot. So, if I stick with this Annihilators list, which units do you think would go well with that? Let me know in the comments. And if I look at the final standings for this event, let's see where I finished. There's 3 losses and 2 wins, but the 2 wins were large, particularly the first win. So out of 16 players, let's see, 12th place, that's disappointing. Apparently 2 players ahead of me with just 2 wins, who somehow were ahead of me despite the fact that, let's have a look. We look at the victory point differential. I actually had a positive victory point differential, and there were quite a few players ahead of me that had negative ones. In fact, the player who finished 3rd had minus 12 victory point differential. So must have won a lot of games, but by small margins, and then lost by huge margins. Let's see. Yeah, so it depends how the events are scored. If it's on victory points or differential or strength of schedule comes into it as well. So happy with the 2 wins, but I feel like the list needs a bit more. Needs more bodies, potential screens to deal with the Orc and Kragnos right in my face type situations early on. Maybe Liberators for that, maybe some magic as well. Plenty to play around with. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, what's coming up next? Well, next weekend there's an Old World tournament with the new matched play rules, which totally transforms that game, so that's going to be very exciting. I still don't know whether I'm taking Chaos Warriors or Dwarves. After that we've got Star Wars Shatterpoint tournament, which I might not cover on the channel anyway because it's too difficult to capture in picture form. And then after that, Kings of War. And then Age of Sigmar immediately after that again. So it's like non-stop tournaments for the next nearly 2 months, I think. There's quite a lot of events lined up there. And I'm going to be playing my usually weekly games as well that'll become battle reports. Some of those will be Age of Sigmar as well. And I'm going to start painting at some point or continue painting some of my Caradron Overlords. It's so close to being a usable army. I want to get it ready for when the book comes out so I can actually play them at some point, because that would be fun. Also, do we think my Sons of Behemat would be in any way useful in this new General's Handbook era? Because the fact they don't have to do weird things like go to the flanks to score battle tactics is actually quite a big deal for them. On the other hand, there are lots of objectives around, so maybe they wouldn't be that great at scoring the primary objectives with only 4 units. Maybe they'd just get swamped like the Bloodthirsters found at this event. So let me know what you think about that as well. And don't forget to check out all the links in the description, including the various social media shenanigans. There's Facebook group, Discord server, Twitter, and all that good stuff. And obviously, if you want to pay for me to go to more events and do more tournament reports and battle reports, why not pledge your entire life savings in the Patreon or PayPal links down there? Pretty much all my disposable income these days goes on miniatures to use in the armies in all these battle reports and also the tournament tickets. So, apart from that, I think final thoughts on this first event with the new General's Handbook. I like the scoring. A lot of the thinking time is removed from each turn. You don't have the nonsense of thinking which battle tactic to do anymore, because it's all just pre-planned already. It reminds me of the old grand strategies, but worth more and over the course of the game, so it's a bit more strategic. And I like how fast it plays now. It's a lot quicker. I quite like the scenarios. I don't have any issues with them yet. I like the fact the objectives don't disappear on many of them, if any. Do any of them disappear? At this event, none of the objectives disappear, which is great for the Questors. And I don't like the disappearing objectives generally. The underdog bonuses don't seem too horribly overpowered. Some of them are quite good, but I don't know if we played those missions yet. Overall, I think it's positive though. The change to battle tactics is the biggest deal. I think obscuring terrain, the meta might shift, but at the moment it didn't seem to make any difference because people didn't really bring gun lines, and if they did, there were also monsters to shoot at. People were still bringing monsters. So maybe it's not going to affect things too much. Maybe it'll be kind of in cycles. Maybe they'll see that there wasn't much shooting, so they'll bring the monsters again, and then people will see there's loads of monsters, so they'll bring loads of shooting, then the monsters will go out of fashion again, so people can hide in the terrain from the gun lines, and maybe it'll go like that. But at the moment it's theoretical, because we didn't really see that play out at this event. We just saw a lot of armies that want to get in your face right away and score those battle tactics very easily, the ones for killing units and taking over the whole table. And as you saw in the game where I was literally massacring the Bloodthirsters, that was when I was able to secure those battle tactics most easily, was when I was just slaughtering the enemy and then just scoring them at the end for free, basically. So maybe they are just win more battle tactics, those ones. When you're already slaughtering, you can score them. And the more situational ones aren't necessarily being chosen yet. So we'll see how it shakes out after a few more events, but for now, I think it's mostly positive. Let me know what you think, though, in the comments. And it's about time to wrap this one up. How long have we been going? Only 2 hours. I think that's pretty solid. 5 packed, juicy, succulent, tender, finger-licking good, extra moist battle reports crammed into one from the new General's Handbook. And thanks for tuning in. All that remains to be said is good night out there, whatever you are.